Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're going to break down a book that has been a total game changer for so many people, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, by licensed therapist Nedra Tawwab. We're going to get into exactly what boundaries are, why they can feel almost impossible to set, and, most importantly, how you can actually start using them in your own life.
You know that feeling, right? That little sinking in your stomach right after you've said yes to something you absolutely do not have the time or energy for. You did it because saying no just felt, well, it felt messy, like you'd be selfish or you'd let someone down, and now you're just left with this lovely cocktail of resentment and pure exhaustion.
Or hey, maybe it looks a little different for you. Maybe it's that coworker who just knows you'll pick up the phone, doesn't matter if it's 9 at night, or that family member whose crisis of the week somehow always ends up in your lap to solve. It's this feeling of being constantly on call for basically everyone else.
Or maybe it's even quieter than that. You know, it's that way you just kind of shrink in certain situations, become more agreeable, and then you feel totally hollowed out afterward. It's the burnout that comes from playing air traffic controller for everyone else's emotions, to the point where you've kind of lost the signal on your own. You see, all of these things, they all point back to one single root cause, a lack of boundaries.
So Nedra Tawwab basically gave a name and a solution to this feeling that so many of us have, and her work just exploded. So today we're going to walk through her entire framework. We'll start with the problem with always saying yes, figure out what boundaries really are, look at the 6 different zones they exist in, find your main barrier to setting them, learn how to set them, and we'll wrap up with what she calls the ultimate litmus test for your relationships.
All right, first things first, we have to tackle the biggest myth about boundaries. A lot of us think they're these big walls we put up to keep people out, but Tawwab says it's the complete opposite. Boundaries are actually what let you stay in relationships with people in a healthy way, without completely burning yourself out.
And this right here is such a critical distinction. A boundary is you stating what you need to feel safe and respected. It is not an ultimatum designed to control someone else. So, for example, if you continue to raise your voice, I'm going to leave the room. That's a boundary. You're not allowed to yell at me. That's an attempt to control. See the difference? The focus is on your action, what you will do, not on ordering them around.
This quote, this one gets right to the heart of it for so many of us. We've been taught somewhere along the way that having needs is selfish. Tawwab's response to that is so powerful. That's not a virtue, that's a wound. And it's a wound that leads directly to burnout and resentment, and it ends up damaging the very relationships we're trying so hard to preserve.
So where do we actually need these boundaries? Well, Tawwab lays out 6 key areas of our lives. And what's interesting is, most of us are probably pretty good in a few of these, and then just completely wide open in others. The trick is figuring out where your defenses are down. First up, we've got physical boundaries. This is pretty straightforward. It's about your body, your personal space, who can touch you, how they can touch you. It also covers your need for privacy and just time alone to recharge. It's your right to say, hey, I'm not really a hugger, or, you know what, I just need a little space to myself right now.
Next, there are sexual boundaries. This is all about consent, about your comfort, and about communicating clearly. And Tawwab is really clear on this point. Just because someone didn't say an explicit no, that doesn't mean you have a yes. Healthy intimacy is all about being able to talk openly about what you want and what your limits are.
Okay, then we get to emotional boundaries. And woo, these can be the toughest ones. This is about the emotional work you do for other people. If you're the friend everyone calls with their drama, if you're always the one soaking up their stress to make them feel okay, then you've probably got some porous emotional boundaries. And, as Tawwab points out, you're also probably exhausted all the time. Mental boundaries are all about protecting your right to have your own thoughts and opinions. It's about being able to disagree with someone respectfully, to hold on to your own beliefs without caving to pressure, and just to think for yourself, especially when you're around really strong personalities. Then you have material boundaries. These are about your stuff, your money, your possessions. This is about, say, lending money you know you can't afford to lose, or giving away something you really care about just because saying no felt way too awkward. And finally, time boundaries. Your time is literally the only resource you can never get more of. Every time you say yes to one thing, you are, by default, saying no to something else. If you look at your calendar and it's just jam-packed with things you have to do instead of things you want to do, that's a huge sign that your time is being dictated by other people's priorities, not your own. So if we get it, if we know these boundaries are so important, why is it still so incredibly hard to actually do it?
This next part of the framework really hits home for people because it digs into the real reasons we stay stuck.
Okay, fear of conflict. That's the big one, right? But here's the thing. People who avoid conflict with others don't actually get rid of the conflict. They just turn it inward, where it becomes anxiety and resentment. Then there's people-pleasing, which is often a survival skill we learned as kids that just doesn't serve us as adults. And honestly, sometimes we've spent so long pushing our own feelings down that we genuinely don't even know what we need anymore.
Okay, so we know what they are and we know why we suck at it. So how do we actually start? The good news is, Tawwab gives us a really clear, structured, and totally non-dramatic way to do this. This isn't about picking a fight, it's about being clear.
First, you've got to name the need and be super specific, not just be nicer, but I need you to not raise your voice at me. Second, you say it calmly, using I statements, and definitely not in the middle of a fight. Third, you state the consequence. This isn't a threat, it's just information. If the yelling continues, I'm going to have to step out of the room. And then, and this is the hardest part for sure, you have to follow through. Because a boundary without a consequence, it's really just a suggestion.
And now we've arrived at what I think is the golden nugget of this whole book. It is this one simple but absolutely devastating observation that will completely change how you see the reactions you get when you finally start setting boundaries. Just let that sink in for a second. That intense pushback you get, the anger, the guilt trips, all of it. That's not proof that you're wrong. It's data. It's information telling you that the relationship was working on a system that benefited them at your expense. Their reaction is literally a measurement of how much they were getting out of you not having a boundary in the first place.
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. Setting boundaries acts like a filter. Some relationships, the ones that were built on you just going along with everything, well, they might not make it. And that's not a failure on your part. It's a clarification. The relationships that do survive, the ones where people listen and adjust and respect you, those are the real ones. Those are the ones built on honesty.
So let's make this real. Here are 3 things you can do right now. First, name the need. Just write down one specific need that isn't being met in a relationship that's draining you. Second, name the pattern. Is it fear, guilt, people-pleasing? Think of a time it stopped you just this past week. And 3, write the script. Actually write out the sentence. You don't even have to say it out loud yet, but just writing it down makes it real. It turns a vague wish into an actual plan.
At the end of the day, Nedra Tawwab's work isn't about building walls. It's about figuring out how to be an honest, healthy participant in your own life. The piece she's talking about, it's not about avoiding conflict. It's about embracing honesty. And it's waiting for you on the other side of finally saying what you actually mean.
And so I'll leave you with this question to think about. Which relationship in your life could be totally transformed by just one clear, honest boundary?